Skin the Heart Away SouthernTea, back with another EP. And today I'm here to talk about Jaime Mungia, and also I'm here to talk about Carlos Adames. Two fights that happened within the last 30 days. One being versus Jaime Mungia versus Gabe Rosado, and the other one this past week being Carlos Adames versus Sergio Derevyanchenko. You had Jaime Mungia in his first real step up fight. You had Jaime Mungia in his first real step up fight versus uh Gabe Rosado, which he came out victorious. I was impressed with Jaime Mungia in his fight versus Gabe Rosado. I think Gabe Rosado, gave him the test that you need from, a young prospect. I think Gabe Rosado, I think Gabe Rosado took Jaime Mungia a place that he's never been before. There was even a time in that fight where I thought that, Gabe Rosado might have been about to stop Mungia. Then, the referee jumped in and he kind of did that thing, that he did if he was paying attention to the fight. Some people feel like the referee jumped in a little early before the round ended in one round type deal. But nonetheless, Jaime Mungia looked great. I was impressed with Jaime Mungia. I think he won that fight pretty convincingly. Each round was close, but he won each round. You know what I mean? Each round of the fight was close, but I feel like Mungia won majority of the rounds pretty clearly. I was impressed with Mungia's defensive improvements. Mungia looks like a real player, in the division now. Mungia was one of the guys that I personally thought was a hype job. But after his fight with Gabe Rosado, who's, a journeyman, a real contender, gatekeeper, whichever you want to call him, he's a guy where he can't beat your fight if you're not ready. You know what I mean? So I'm giving Jaime Mungia full credit for beating Gabe Rosado. I think that was a great win for Jaime Mungia. The other fight I have up here is Carlos Adames. Carlos Adames this past week just fought on the Tank Davis versus Isaac Cruz undercard. Carlos Adames faced off against Sergio Derevyanchenko. And in the fight, he was highly impressive. He showed, extremely good boxing skills. Showed extremely good defensive, mindset. Highest power. Derevyanchenko wasn't able to land too many clean shots. Wasn't able to, just walk through Carlos Adames. Carlos Adames is coming up from 154, so a lot of people, consider him, the smaller guy in this fight. But Carlos Adames is one of those guys, who has he has a pretty long reach. I think his reach is like 72 inches. You know what I mean? So he's a guy with a pretty, decent reach, even though he's coming up from 154. In this fight, I actually did pick him to win versus Derevyanchenko. Now, you might know Sergey Derevyanchenko. He fought Triple G. You know what I mean? He was Canelo Alvarez mandatory, but Canelo Alvarez chose not to fight him. He also fought Jamal Charlo. Now, he lost the Triple G fight. He lost the Jamal Charlo fight. But a lot of people think that he won the Triple G fight. And some people think that, he gave Charlo, a run for his money, think he did damn good against Charlo. I'm one of those people who think he did damn good against Charlo. He did give him a run for his money, but Charlo won that fight. Each of the rounds were close. He even hurt Charlo. Well, I think Charlo won that fight, and he won majority of the rounds. Carlos Adames was the underdog in this fight going up against Sergio Derevyanchenko this weekend. I'm one of the people who's high on Carlos Adames. I think he's a real figure. He's a real factor in the 160-pound division. Now, his last fight was at 154. His most recent fight was at 160. His fight before the last fight was at 154. His most recent fight was at 160. And I'm telling y'all, this Carlos Adames guy is a real player in his division, as you probably know now, after his win versus Sergio Derevyanchenko, which will be his biggest win of his career so far. And I'm going to tell y'all, I'm one of the guys that's on this Carlos Adames train. But interesting news, right after the fight, I'm telling you, if you didn't know, I made a video after Jaime Mungia's last fight versus Gabe Rosado that the WBC had announced Jaime Mungia and Derevyanchenko were going to face off in the title eliminator to fight Jamal Charlo. I made a video, you said, Jamal Charlo versus Jaime Mungia after Jaime Mungia's fight. You know what I mean? Thinking that, of course, Jaime Mungia is going to fight Derevyanchenko, and then the winner's going to fight Jamal Charlo, just like they said. But Derevyanchenko also had a fight coming up in the midst of them making this title eliminator with Derevyanchenko. Derevyanchenko had a fight coming up against this guy called Carlos Adames that you see in this video. Well, Carlos Adames spoiled the party, you guys, and he beat Derevyanchenko, beat him pretty convincingly. Looked good doing it too as well. He spoiled the party. So by default, the title eliminated that Derevyanchenko was supposed to fight automatically goes to the winner, Carlos Adames. So now this is setting up Carlos Adames. What's good? Shout out my guy Terry Smoot. Shout out my guy DP Rock. Now this is setting up Carlos Adames versus Jaime Mungia for a title eliminator versus Jamal Charlo. And so this news came out Saturday. This news came out like Saturday, Sunday after Carlos Adames fight. You know what I mean? So I kind of been doing my due diligence, been doing my homework ever since then. And the team of Jaime Mungia came out and said that they're interested in other options. You know what I mean? Other options not being Carlos Adames. Carlos Adames, after that, he said, I'm open to fight anybody. I'll fight anybody at 154 or 160. You know what I mean? Carlos Adames is ready for a title shot. He's ready for those big fights, as he stated in his most recent interview. But Jaime Mungia's team seems to be a little hesitant, to get in there with Carlos Adames. They were all for it when it was Sergio Derevyanchenko, but they're not as quick, not as excited about fighting Carlos Adames. But again, the WBC has ordered this fight. Originally, they ordered Derevyanchenko versus Mungia for a title shot at Charlo, but you got Carlos Adames beating Derevyanchenko, so he takes that spot. Now, Jaime Mungia has been in the number one spot in the WBC for a long time. WBC, WBO. I think he's number one in most of the divisions. He has just chosen, not to pursue his mandatory spot or anything like that. You know what I mean? So this is not on normal for Jaime Mungia, to not necessarily push for a title shot or for those bigger fights. The problem with Jaime Mungia was we want to see him in there with a live dog, somebody, somewhat of a 50-50 fight. He gave us Gabe Rosado. I was highly impressed. But if Jaime Mungia was all for fighting Sergio Derevyanchenko for a title eliminator, and now Carlos Adames just beat Derevyanchenko, and now all of a sudden, you're not necessarily, now the title eliminator is not necessarily what's number one on your docket. I'm going to have to look at you kind of funny, you know what I mean, Jaime Mungia. Now, Jaime Mungia was one of those guys that I thought was a hype job earlier. I thought he was a hype job earlier type deal. You know what I mean? But after his fight with Gabe Rosado, I thought he was a hype job earlier. After his fight with Gabe Rosado, I'm now giving him full credit. But if you make this move with Carlos Adames, because this is a fight, that the fans will, would like to see. You know what I mean? So, big fight. Jaime Mungia has made hella strides in his boxing career since the first time that I seen him and the last time that I seen him. Shout out Jaime Mungia. You've made hella improvements. Carlos Adames is the guy that I'm high on. You know what I mean? I've been watching him, for a minute. I seen his last two fights live, and I went back and I watched the other one. So I'm a fan of Carlos Adames. I like this Jaime Mungia versus Carlos Adames fight. I need Team Mungia to get on board with this, just like you was on board for the fight with Sergey Derevyanchenko. You know what I mean? Be on the lookout. Remember this name, Carlos Adames, y'all. Remember that name. Be on the lookout for it. This guy gonna be a real major hitter and major player in the 160 or the 154-pound division. But that's all I got. It's getting the harder way, SouthernTea. This ain't the past. This ain't the future. But this the present. That's how we rocking. And I'm out. Love. Make sure y'all follow me to the next video, because I'm about to go on my next video and we about to chop it up, about MMA versus boxing. Korean Rampage Jackson, versus Shannon Briggs. MMA is currently up 1-0 with this event. So make sure y'all follow over there to be schooled on this new triad combat sports. Appreciate y'all sliding through this done, dog. I'm out. Love.